think one of our strongest desires, if not the most strong desire of human beings, is for the familiar. I realized this as I was driving home today, thinking about some of the complaints that I had in my head about some of the issues that were going on in my life. And very quickly, I was able to pull myself back and see how unfortunate of a perspective I was occupying in the moment. I was frustrated because somebody close to me didn't, do a particular task that I was hoping that they did, and I was really fuming about it. I was holding this hot coal, if you will, of frustration. There's a great story of two Buddhist monks walking down a river, and there's this kind of patch of mud, and all of a sudden a noble woman comes, and she treats them really poorly and says, "You there, pick me up and carry me across this mud." And so the older master with his young apprentice, they're kind of sitting there, and the master is like, "Okay, sure, whatever." And so he's kind of gently going over and picks her up. And as he's carrying her across the stream, she's berating him and, just treating him poorly, and he puts her down. And then they continue their silent meditation. The younger Buddhist is sitting there or walking alongside him, and, he's kind of wondering, like, why, Master, did you do this? And why are you still so content now that lady treated you so poorly? And the master says to him, "Student, I put that lady down, 5 minutes ago, whereas you're still carrying her." I find that story to be often the case with mental struggle. Like, we decide how much weight we're going to put into that particular experience. I mean, the worst thing that can happen to a human being, if you think about, obviously there's like pain and abuse, and there's a lot of terrible, kind of like physical things that can happen. But from a social perspective, it's usually humiliation. Being humiliated on a grand public scheme, like, is one of our worst fears as human beings. So we're always trying to find ways to not get humiliated in front of our peers. And let's say, for example, you went through something humiliating. You had, I don't know what it is for you, divorce, a child, laid off, a public fight with somebody, criminal charges, whatever it is. Like, we may think that in the sphere of the public world that humiliation really, really matters, and to a degree it does. But the extent with which we allow it to impact our life is fully our decision. It's us who decides how much weight we put on this scale of, this is going to be a component of myself that occupies my energy and attention. And so some people, for really, really small things, put tons of weight on these small things, and it weighs them down. And other people can seemingly kind of roll through life, perhaps going through bad experiences, humiliating experiences, and it not affecting them as much. They're not putting as much weight to that experience. That's a decision that you make. How much of this experience am I going to allow to affect me? How much of this am I going to, if I look at the scales of my life in a day, how much am I going to allow my mental energy to weigh the scales in the direction of that experience? It works just as well for negative experiences as it does positive experiences. It's the same concept. And the reason I bring it up is because today, when I was on my drive home, I was looking at these negative thoughts I was having, and I was pretty quickly able to just take a step back and see that they were short-sighted and shallow. And I was super grateful that I was then able to turn my attention towards the good things in my life. And this is a new skill for me. When I was 20 years old in the throes of depression and suicidal ideation, I couldn't snap out of it like I can today. I've done a lot of things to get to this point, and I'm not saying I've solved anything, but the ability to snap out of that like destructive, negative feedback loop is something a skill I hope everybody has. And the reason I think it's important is because our ability to snap out of those negative feedback loops, to decide how much weight, how much energy, how much time we're going to spend on these negative or positive experiences, how much they're going to affect and impact our lives, is self-created. However, every single system in your life that hasn't been created by you or somebody who is extremely altruistic, and it's an anomaly. Maybe there was a teacher or a parent or somebody close to you who genuinely wanted the best for you and set up a system in order to bring that out of you. I can think of a few people in my life, but generally speaking, the consumer kind of economic, governmental, every other system in the United States largely, or any power structure, is designed to maintain control. Control, predictability is what these systems want to deliver. And having every human being feel a super high degree of autonomy, inspiration, power, and potential is not perceived as a stable system today. So many of the systems that we have in place are designed to keep people in a stable system. A select few people able to kind of traverse the economic modalities, the economic barriers, but largely many people who kind of don't have that capability. Because if every person had the ability to traverse massive adversity, eventually you'd have too many people at the top, the system would fall over. It's just not designed to have every human being thrive in that sense. So what was so striking about my thought today as I'm driving home is why I fall back into these negative thought patterns. And the reason is because they're familiar. They're super familiar. If you saw my River Cutters video, I talk about how our thought patterns create grooves. And the deeper those grooves, the more difficult they are to change those thought patterns. So if you have the same thought over and over again, you're gonna continue to have that deep groove in your brain to or your patterning or whatever, to be in that space. It's more familiar. So here I am, made so much change in my life, but still I have a huge familiarity towards negativity and depressive thoughts. And so I go there often. I have the ability to snap out of it, but I'm still very familiar with those ideas. Those feelings feel very comfortable to me. In fact, feeling that negativity is often more comfortable than not feeling it, because it's more familiar, because I've spent so much time and energy in that headspace. And human beings strive for familiarity, almost above all else, if you think about it. We're constantly bombarded with information. It's sensory overload. I think, the statistic is it's not even 1%, it's like a sliver of 1% of the total visible spectrum that we have the ability to perceive. Yet we're expected to survive in this physical medium. Familiarity is the way that we ensure our survival, by going to the things that are familiar with us, that have helped us get to this space. And for me, going to those negative thought patterns is familiar. So I'm very comfortable going there, despite them harming myself and the people around me. But above all else, like, human beings strive for familiarity. It means safety, it means the propagation of our, survival, even if these things are destructive, even if it's abuse, even if it's, negative things, we still strive for the familiar. And we become addicted to it, even if it is not serving us. Which is why change is so hard, because I would say that most people in life would choose the decision that is more familiar with them than the one that's better for them. I mean, better. Define better, but more optimal. I don't know. And there's tons of research on the familiarity bias, but I think that this happens every day in every decision, not just in these experiments. I think it happens in every moment, your brain seeks familiar psychological states. Frankly, it just takes less energy. Like, not as much energy to be in this state of, open awareness or whatever. So people crave familiarity, and I found myself craving that familiarity. And when I look at the systems that are designed around human beings today, I kind of see them as like trying to create helplessness as a form of familiarity. Like, your lack of control, your lack of ability should feel very, very common, accessible. That makes you a person that's able to be controlled more easily. So I think, the scary thing in the world, like, many of us are sort of living in these pseudo states of fear, where we're huddled under a little newspaper that we've got above our head, which is our belief system. And we think that there's this rainstorm, just completely deluge, and we're huddled under this, newspaper with our learned beliefs of, like, these are the things that are keeping me safe, and, like, this is my familiarity. And all of our systems around us are like, you need to stay underneath that little piece of newspaper. When in reality, I think that we could all probably just drop those newspapers and step out into the rain and realize that, this rain is, we don't understand it. And it's not necessarily bad. It's unknown. However, it's actually this belief system that is creating this sense of learned helplessness and negativity and internal struggle, because these are the messages that we've been told are familiar and they protect us, they advance our survival, which I just don't believe anymore. I think they protect the status quo. In reality, I think we should be trying to seek out the opportunities that help us shed that belief system, get out into the rain and be rinsed clean from our preconceived notions of who we are, what we're capable of, and why we're here, and what the purpose of life is, and what our relationships are. even our belief systems are oftentimes shackles that are limiting us from kind of basking in the awe that is the inexplainable. Of what is.